Who you gonna call? Probably me, since I'm wearing the Ghostbuster costume. Just cut to the intro. Welcome, fellow prop makers, to episode 1 of Epically Geeky Makers, the show that explores our creative geeky sides. On this episode, we're actually going to talk about one of the props that a lot of Ghostbusters tend to overlook whenever they're doing their costume. Now, if you're doing a costume from the original Ghostbusters first movie, there was this leg hose, and this is basically it in a nutshell. So, we're actually going to talk about how I redesigned and made this version that is very easy to put on, pretty easy to make, but best of all, won't damage the suit at all, which of course, if you've already paid the money for it, something we don't want to do. I got a 3D printer for Christmas, and it's the best gift ever because it allows me to make stuff even when I'm doing other things. I've actually made quite a few things with it. I'm working on a ghost trap right now that Count Spatula put out. I created these awesome ecto goggles. I'm actually going to do a more screen accurate version eventually. But then I also ran across the leg hose connector. Now, this original model I got online from Thingiverse, which is where we get most of our stuff, it seems like, is from tgoacher. By the way, good job, man. Excellent job. But whenever I printed it, if you look closely, it's very low polygon count. And I asked around, is it supposed to be that way? And it's actually supposed to be smooth. So instead of having to go back through and do a lot of sanding and some Bondo work, I decided I would remake the model with a higher polygon count. So this is the one that I created. I basically took the measurements almost exactly from Goacher's original model and printed it out. Now, his model also included this little piece. And this piece actually goes on the back of your belt. It's supposed to screw in and allows the hose to connect. The belt that I have, though, I wasn't sure if it had the eyelets on it. Turns out it does. So I really could have just used the connector that he created. But like I said, I wasn't sure about it. So I actually went in and modeled my own connector. My connector allows you to basically just loop it onto the back of the belt, so that way it can easily come off, which is nice. The idea here is you're going to take the connector, you're going to glue in some very strong 10mm magnets in the back of it, 4 of them actually, and then what that will allow you to do is to snap it onto the suit. Once you get your model printed, you've got 2 different options. If you print it out in gray, which is what I originally printed this out in, actually it's silver, you could just leave it like it is. It actually looks pretty good, especially if you get a really good print on it. But I decided to go ahead and sand and paint mine. We'll talk a little bit more about that on another time. That being said, once you have your 3D model printed, you're going to take some small circular 10mm magnets and you're going to glue them in here on the back. What that will allow you to do is, using something like an 1.5" wide washer, you can then attach it to your suit without causing any problems. The other nice thing about this is, if something happens and it gets pulled, it'll just come right off. I also modeled a little plug that goes inside the connector. On my model, I made a slot so you can also put a 10mm magnet down into the bottom and put a 10mm magnet onto the plug. This should allow it to connect. The thing about it is there's actually enough friction here on the tube and on the connector that you don't really have to have the magnet. So that's up to you if you want to keep it in there or not. I actually opted not to put a magnet in the bottom of it. Like I said, plugs in there, looks good, doesn't come undone that easily. But if it gets pulled enough, it will separate, once again saving your suit. Then on the other end, we have the belt connector that I created, and that just goes around into the back. So when it's all said and done, you put the connector on your suit, put the plug in the hose, put the belt clip on the other end, and then you can attach it to your suit. While it will pull off if it gets grabbed or you snag it on something, it's not going to come off that super easy, so you can actually walk around a con all day and not have a problem with it. I have tested that, so I know for a fact. If you want to, you can still use the connector that tgoacher originally created and just attach it to the back of your belt. The only thing is, I didn't want to go with this because it would be permanently attached and I want to be able to take it off pretty easy. Once you have your connector situated, the next part is to go onto the hose. Now, in order to create the hose, you're going to use 1/2 inch diameter a rubber hose. You can get it from Amazon. I actually got this from Lowe's. Most of the big Home Depot areas will have it. You're also going to need a measuring cup, distilled vinegar, a large pot to boil stuff in, and then something to actually do the coloring. And as for the coloring, it's recommended to use the Rit Golden Yellow dye. Cut your hose so that it's about 5.5 to 6 feet long. I would measure it first depending on your height. You don't want it to be too long so you're stepping on it, but you also want to have it so that it's got the correct distance. Fill your pot with water and get it on to boil. The first time I did this, it didn't turn out so well, so I went back and tried it a second time and changed a few things. One of the things I did was I actually boiled the hose as well. I figured softening it up would help it to absorb the color. Don't boil it too long because we don't want it to melt or stick or have a problem. Pull it out, dump your water into your large bucket, add your Rit dye. Now you can buy the packets, use an entire packet. You can also buy it in the liquid bottle, which is what I did the first time. I think about half the bottle will work, but if you're not planning on dyeing anything else, just gonna dump it all in there. It's not gonna hurt anything anyway. A lot of people use salt to help it absorb the color, but if you read the bottle carefully, it says to use distilled vinegar if you're dyeing vinyl. And since it's a rubber hose, I figured that's the better way to go. So I used 1.5 cups of vinegar. Once you have it mixed up thoroughly, slowly put your rubber hose in, making sure that you don't have any air pockets. After about an hour, it was colored, it looked good, but I did this at night, so I went ahead and just left it in the bucket overnight. Figured, what the heck, I'm not gonna hurt anything anyway. Got up the next morning, pulled out the hose. Sure enough, it was dyed. I hung it up for a day or two just to make sure I got all the moisture out. And there it is, there's our hose. It's not super yellow, but it's got a good yellow tint. And especially if you compare it to the original, you can definitely tell the color's there. I didn't want it to be super bright. I'm sure there's probably a way to do that, or I could just buy one, but I thought this was the best way to go. Once your hose is dyed, you can put the plug-in on the one end, put the belt clip on the other, and you're pretty much good to go. Now, to connect it to your actual suit, I use about 1.5 inch wide washer. It's very easy. You just take it, put it on the inside of your suit, somewhere here about on the leg, and it'll clip on with the magnets, and it stays. It's awesome. At this point, you take your hose, like I said, the friction will hold it into the connector. Comes around the back here, clip it on your belt, and there you go. You have a Ghostbuster 1 somewhat accurate hose. Like I said, the nice thing is, you're walking around a con, this gets caught on something, either the whole thing comes off, the hose comes off, one way or another, it's gonna come off, and it will not rip your suit, which is the most important part. Just a side note, as you can see as I pulled this off, the washer is going to fall down the rest of your pant leg, and if you're wearing your boots, it's probably going to get caught down there. It's kind of a pain, but you can deal with it. All right, fellow ghost heads, well, that's it. I hope you enjoyed the first episode. Right now, this looks like it's going to be about a bi-weekly show, so we'll see. Hopefully, we can get it ramped up to at least once a week. I'm working with it on my partner, Ray, who's also an artist, so we're going to be doing some really interesting things, anywhere from prop making to maybe house repair to painting to whatever it is we feel like doing, because we're makers. We like to make stuff, and we hope you do too. If you haven't already, definitely give us a thumbs up on the episode, and if you haven't yet, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next episode of Epically Geeky Makers. See you next time.